review parts for the new Yamaha R7. Today, we'll be installing some brand new ASV F3 levers for their reputation, reliability, adjustability, and, of course, color selection. Some of the factors that led me to purchase ASV levers were lack of availability of other reliable levers. There's some Chinese eBay and Amazon crap, and there's been some instances already where the brake lever fails or locks or doesn't function properly. And I think that has a lot to do with the brand new Brembo RCS master cylinders. These master cylinders operate a little bit differently, and as a result, there aren't too many aftermarket parts for them just yet. Anyhow, let's get to the unboxing. So, went with gold as an accent color, and I went with the shorty on the clutch side. As you go like this with it, that it's very rugged, the fitment is nice and tight. When you look at some of the cheaper knockoff levers, you have extra play in here, which is not good. And then of course you have the adjustability to thumb wheel this in and out to adjust where the lever sits. Well, let's get it on the bike and see. First, cover the paint and protect the area underneath the lever, just in case something gets dropped or in case you get a little overzealous with the ratchet. I have my handlebars ever so slightly turned to the right. If you turn them all the way to the right, this part of the fairing gets in the way, and if you turn it all the way to the left, the tank and the fairing gets in the way. So a slight turn to the right is all that's needed, and a 10mm socket. I have a deep socket. That should be okay. You might be better off with a regular depth, standard depth socket. Slight change of plan. I'm going to try a flathead and see if I can get underneath without damaging. It's coming out. I don't want to get a nick in my clutch cable, so I'm taking more time with this than what's probably really necessary. Okay, that does appear to have some lubrication on it. I'm going to narrow these to be smaller than the head, but not actually pinch on the cable, because I don't want pitting on the cable, which will make it hang up potentially. Okay, I'm just going to towel my hands off for a second. All right, line that up. It's not cable is right. It is. There we go. Edge it on down. There we go. Okay, while that's staked in place, yep, I think that'll do nicely. This is what happens if you tighten it too much. So don't tighten it too much. We'll undo this a turn. Boom. There we go. Now check it to make sure that it's a good torque spec, because you don't want it to be loose either. And it is a little firmer than the stock clutch, but you can one finger this. You're going to end up with some wrist pump at the end of the day probably, but it can be done. Okay, so surely if you've gotten to the point where you've purchased levers, you'll realize that this Brembo master cylinder is different than any of the other Brembo master cylinders, is not the same as the R1 or the R6, is not the same as the MT-07, and that you've come to the conclusion that there are only a handful of levers that fit properly. And if you purchase a lever that is not of high quality, what happens is the way this pin fits in the piston doesn't actuate correctly, and it could seize, get stuck, or not actuate your brakes properly. The other thing that I noted on this side is that a 10mm deep socket doesn't give you ample workspace. And okay, so I slipped off the nut with a 12-point ratcheting wrench and did not strip the nut, but I became very worried that I would if I persisted. There's a bit of limited clearance, and so I want to show you what I came up with, while of course trying not to lose parts inside the bike. So if you have a shallow 10 mil and a hinge joint, you can put that together on a socket, loosen, and it clears things if you put the handlebars in a left turning position. Normally this would almost be finger tight at this point, where you'd be able to sort of just twist it out. That's got to be finger tight at this point. And 10mm down, of course. It's a joke at this point. It fell all the way through. And just because it's about as comical as it gets, we have located the 10mm socket. Let's see if we can get it out from there. Ho ho ho! Okay, that's out. This should loosen up. And that goes right out of there. Perfect. So this is the original piece, and this comes on the new piece. And in fact, the new piece was positioned like this, and so you have to rotate this until you get to here. Sort of work it in there just right, and you have to finagle with it. Now I'm looking down into the hole, and I can see that the lever is actually ever so slightly forwards of where I want it to be. Okay, so I had to jostle this around a little bit in order to get this pin to seat through there. And I'm going to move the fork a little bit, so that way I can thread this guy back in. We'll grab our rescued 10mm, and just in case you don't believe me, let's see if we can get it to focus in on that. Can you read that? Oh yeah. They say it doesn't happen. Okay, so last thing, always function check. And I just want to make sure that they bite and release. There you go.